Hi guys, Matt Easton here. So yesterday I put up a video of some fun melee fighting and some legitimate questions came up that I thought I'd just address in a little video here, kind of straight off the back of yesterday's melee video. The first thing is, some fair number of people said about soft hitting and that some of the hits that we did wouldn't have caused a wound. This is choice. It's very easy, if I just grab a sword, it's very easy for me to tap someone or for me to whack someone. It's the same thing, okay? So very simply, if I decide, or any of the other fighters decide to tap someone, it's for a reason. It's either because we don't need to hit them hard, because we know that we can hit them hard, or it's maybe because their back is turned, or we're striking at an area which doesn't have much protection on. Melee fighting is much more likely to cause injury than standard one-on-one fighting, because usually when you get hit by someone you're not looking at, and this is one of the main themes and one of the main things you learn from skirmishing and fighting in a melee, is that you might be fighting the guy here, but bam, you get hit by someone over there. So clearly if you're the person over there doing the hit, you don't need to hit me as hard as you physically can in the head, because all you need to do is signify that you could do it. Okay, so that's the first point, is any of the hits which we do softly, we could do very hard, and sometimes we do them very hard, particularly with, it has to be said, particularly with opponents who don't declare their hits. And most of us do hit them a little bit harder in order to get them to declare their hits. Whereas people we know who are good at declaring their hits, you don't have to hit them hard. But any of the hits that we do, we could easily disable a limb or knock someone out or take their head off if we were using sharp swords out of armour. And that's important to reiterate, that this is unarmoured, like civilian brawling. Okay, so armoured fighting is utterly different. So second point, a lot of people said about shields and spears, and that shields and spears, or either people having sword and shield or having spears or having shield and spear, would dominate that fight. Yeah, hell yeah! Spears and shields are the absolute, to use a British expression, the dog's bollocks. That means really, really good. That's why armies used shields and spears for centuries, millennia in fact. So yeah, obviously if there were spears involved in the melee, then the spears would dominate the fight, and equally if everyone had shields, or if one side had shields, they would steamroller the side without shields. Absolutely. That's why shields and spears were so important right the way across the world, right the way across history. However, that's not what we're simulating. We primarily fight one-on-one with swords. That's what we're trained in. We don't do much melee combat. We only do a little bit of spear, and officially we don't do any large shield use in the club, although unofficially we do occasionally in sparring. So the fact of the matter is that that is not what we were simulating. We were simulating, imagine if you like, a civilian brawl between a bunch of civilians who are carrying swords. Civilians don't walk around with spears and shields, okay? Think of this as a street fight. So something akin in the modern world to something like a brawl between two gangs with knives. It's not like battlefield simulation, okay? And that leads me on to the third point. The third point is a number of people made comments about the space available. It's a hall. Believe it or not, in history there have been many fights between groups of civilians in confined spaces, and that's what we were doing. It is not a battlefield. We are clearly, if we wanted to do outdoor fighting, we do outdoor fighting, and we do outdoor fighting. We do fight outside in open spaces, and at fight camp, for anybody who comes to fight camp, you'll know that we have melee games, and we have in fact a melee tournament competition now, which started in 2014, that is held in an open space, a very large space. However, one of the important aspects of learning how to skirmish or melee is fighting in enclosed spaces. You can't always have, you know, unlimited amount of field to run around in. Very often skirmishes and melees happened in streets, happened in urban environments. There were fights in buildings. Obviously, if you're in a siege and you stream over the walls into a breach, you've got enclosed space to fight in. Often fights happened in buildings that you're trying to occupy, and very often in history fights happened in streets where you've got walls either side of you. So in actual fact, learning to fight in a room, whilst it's completely different to battlefield stuff in general, unless it's a siege, it's a very important skill to learn how to fight in a confined space. Finally, I would just emphasise the point that we are not melee specialists at all. We primarily fight one-on-one, and ultimately that obviously comes across in the fighting style of the people there. People tend, in our club when we do melee games, to fight as individuals, but this is something we're working on. It's one of the reasons that we have these fun, occasional melee skirmish fun sessions, because it's a completely different skill set learning to fight in groups. And I'll just go back to one of the first points I made again. Usually when you get hit, it's not by the person you're fighting here. You get hit by someone over here or behind you. So it's a completely different skill set. And all we're showing in that video, and we'll probably do others in the future, is imagine civilian, so unarmoured, so one hit and you're going to be grievously wounded. Unarmoured, sort of skirmishing or scuffle or brawl, whatever you want to call it, with sharp swords and with the kind of sidearms that you might walk around with as a civilian in certain parts of the world. Not spears, not halberds, not shields, no armour involved, and no large shields. Okay, there we go guys, I hope that helps clarify and also maybe spurs you into some thoughts of how you might do melee games in different ways. Not all melee games are about battle simulation. Probably, statistically, the vast majority of skirmishes or melees in history have not been on a battlefield. They've actually been in civilian situations where there's been uprisings or fights between gangs or fights between people against government forces, all these kind of things that have actually been held in streets with sidearms, not with battlefield weapons and not with armour, and in enclosed environments. There we go guys, cheers!